Multiplication is times tables, and it's also an easier and faster way to add. Instead of doing 3 plus 3 plus 3, you can do 3 times 3 equals 9, and you can do that with almost any number.
Multiplication is when you have a number of groups and how many are in the groups, and try to get the product or the answer to how many are in, like how many are in the number of groups and how many are in the groups.
I think multiplication is easier to use instead of addition, because when you use addition, you usually use a run-on sentence if you have to use a lot of numbers to fit into one number sentence. So you could also use addition to write it down, because it's not like 5 times 2. It's like 2 plus 2 plus 2 plus 2 plus 2, and then you get to your answer. And so I think multiplication is better.
Multiplication is 2 groups, like 4 times 5 equals 20. It means like 4 groups of 5 that equals 20.
How is multiplication related to division?
Well, you can use multiplication to help you with division. Like if you go 5 times 5 equals 25, and then you go 25 divided by 5 equals 5.
Multiplication is backwards division, because like 5 times 3 equals 15, and 15 divided by 5 equals 3. The relationship between multiplication and division, well, they're exactly the same except they're in reverse. One goes factor, and then you have to find the product. One goes product, factor, and you have to find the other factor. Multiplication is related to division, because division, you're dividing them into groups, and multiplication, you're adding the groups together, so the groups are the similar part.
How would you explain multiplication to a younger student at LREI?
Well, 3 times 5 is 15, and the first number is how many times you're adding the second number, and in that, the second number is 5, so it's just like 5 plus 5 plus 5, because that's 3 5s adding together. I can tell the difference between multiplication and division problems, because in division, it gives you the product, which is the answer in the bigger number, and in multiplication, it gives you the 2 factors, and you have to figure out the product, and I call that
Ryan's rule.
Yeah!
How do you figure out the difference between multiplication and division? Or how is multiplication related to division, I should say?
Multiplication, when you try to figure out the total of 2 groups, and division when you split the 2 groups.
How would you explain how to do multiplication to a younger student?
I would tell the younger student that you're basically just adding a number 1 time, 2 times, 3 times, or 4 times or more. For example, 5 times 5 is basically just going 5 plus 5 plus 5 plus 5 plus 5.
How can you tell the difference between a multiplication story problem and a division story problem?
In a division problem, they give you the total and you have to divide it. And in a multiplication problem, you have the factors and you have to figure out the total.
How can you tell the difference between a multiplication and division story problem?
In multiplication problems, you are
adding groups of numbers together. Say you have 3 times 3, you're adding 3 groups of 3 together, and that's 9. In division problems, you're splitting up numbers into like groups. So you have 9, and then you have 9 divided by 3, so you're splitting 9 into 3 groups of 3.
How can you tell the difference between a multiplication and division story problem?
I can tell them apart by the story. In division, they tell you the product, but in multiplication, they don't. So you have to find the product in multiplication. Yay!
How would you explain multiplication to a younger student?
Well, basically you put the times in the back. Like, for example, 3 times 5. Instead of that, you could write, for example, 1, 3, 5 times. Or you could think of it this way, like 1 group of 2 or like 3 groups of 5 or something like that.
How is multiplication related to division?
Multiplication is related to division because in multiplication they give you one group and the other group, and you try to figure out the product using the first group as many times as the second group. And in division they give you the first group but not the second group, and they give you the total, and you try to figure out the second group that would equal the answer.
How can you tell the difference between a multiplication and division problem?
In a multiplication problem, it tells you 2 factors and you need to figure out the product. And in a multiplication problem, it tells you the product and a factor and you need to figure out the other factor.
Multiplication's adding equal groups quickly because you add the same group like a lot of times. So you get like an answer that like is similar to when you add, like if you do 5 plus 5 plus 5 plus 5, that you could turn that into 5 times 4 and it would equal 20. So you would do like 5, 10, 15, 20.
Can you prove 6 times 5 equals 30 in 3 different ways?
Yeah, one way is 5 times 3 equals 15. 15 times 2 equals 30. Another way is using an array. And another way is using a number line by going 5 plus 5 plus 5 plus 5 plus 5.
Why don't you show us your arrays and your number line to show us what you did. There's the array, and there's the number line. Back to recess, sir.